Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Books and Such podcast. Do we have a treat for you today? We decided to answer some of our audience Q&As that you have so lovingly left for us. And so today we are just going to be talking over some questions that you have about publishing, in general and writing, and we are excited to do that. So I have here with me Barb Roose and Cynthia Ruchti. So hello, ladies. How are you today?
Doing great. Glad to be here.
Excited to answer some of these questions.
Excellent. So let's go ahead and get started with our first one. Oh, this is a good one. Should a writer use a pen name? And this is applicable to both nonfiction and fiction. Cynthia, why don't you take this one? Do you have some thoughts on this?
I have a few thoughts. I know you two do as well. But one of my thoughts is that sometimes people are choosing a pen name because there are circumstances about the book they're writing. Usually that's nonfiction, that they need the layer of protection or safety and privacy that using a pen name would give them. And that can work, but there are some very careful considerations that people need to keep in mind too, because usually these days, even if you use a pen name, people can figure out who you are. That's one thing. The second thing is that it really hampers your marketing ability. If you use a pen name for your writing, how are you going to market that? How will you be on radio broadcasts or television interviews? How are you going to have two different audiences for the books you write not in your pen name and the books you write with your under your pen name? There are some authors who have been able to pull it off well because they have let their audience know all of my crime fiction is written under this pen name, and all of my cozy romances are written under my actual name, my actual author name. Some have been able to make that work well. But I know, Barb, you probably have some, especially in regard to nonfiction, you have some real interesting thoughts to add to that too, I'm sure.
Well, I think you did such a great job of covering the considerations. I love that phraseology. When I am talking with someone who has a pen name, what I generally find out is it's more of a heart thing that they need to work through, whether it feels like imposter syndrome, this fear of putting oneself fully out there, or it is a little bit more of a nuance of what you shared of somebody who has some things that they really want to say, but they think a pen name will be protecting the either the people that they're talking about or they're protecting themselves. I had a situation where it was someone who wanted to write a memoir and had grown up in a very difficult household. Well, this writer had some things deep, deep, deep in their heart that they needed to make known. I love that quote, grief requires a witness or grief demands a witness. This person wanted to be honest about the hard and horrible things that they grew up in. And while they've had these steps of forgiveness for their parent, they still felt it was important to tell the truth, but they didn't want to put their parent on blast. And so the only way they could figure out how to do this was a pen name. Well, they were, like you said, Cynthia, people can figure things out. And so when people use a pen name, but you're still talking about specific events, the cousin of your grandma's best friend is going to be like, ooh, I know who that is. So that's why we've got to talk about considerations.
I do have one other thing to add, if that's okay, which is sometimes the author has an awkward name. Either a name that is so popular, it's like John Doe or something like that. How is that going to Google? Not very well. There are a million John Does out there. And so rather than pen name, adjusting your own name for your author name sometimes is a better option for you. And it might be that you're using your maiden name as your last name, or it could be your middle name as part of your name, or if your first name is a little bit awkward or it sounds kind of sing-songy, but you write really deep meditative books, then you might be able to adjust your real name. And an agent can actually help you with that and think through that.
Oh yeah, like I was thinking of an example, and you may know her. She has had some best-selling books. Rachel Wojnarowski, and her name is Rachel Wojo because she knows that folks will have difficulty saying her name, and she does not want that to trip up her reader because she has a very large audience. She is a beautiful, beautiful writer. And so her last book that came out, it was just simply Rachel Wojo. And I just thought, what a brilliant understanding of how to make things easier so that people can connect with her. But also, I mean, it doesn't take away from the name that she's proud of. It's just that, like you said, Cynthia, she's got to work with it.
Absolutely. Those are such great thoughts. And I have nothing to add. I think you two covered that beautifully. So let's get on to the next one. Acceptable genres in Christian fiction. So this was an interesting question because Christian fiction does encompass a lot of different genres, but there are absolutely some that it does not. So, Barb, why don't you take this one?
Fantastic. This feels like a giant curveball coming my way. And I have basically three, what is it? I've got 2 strikes and 3 balls right now. Let me take my best swing. So this, and Cynthia and Jen, get ready, girls. When we talk about genres, particularly in Christian fiction, what the picture I like to view in front of me is a bookstore. And so every bookstore has specific shelves, and in these shelves there are going to be books in specific genres. We have our contemporary, we've got historical romance, we have suspense, we have romantic suspense, women's fiction. Those tend to be the more popular categories that we work with. And one of the questions that comes up often is, do I have to write in a specific genre? Well, I want you to think about books that are on each of those shelves. And classically, it's been very difficult to try to split a book between shelves. In order for a reader, when they are looking for something, your book needs to fit into a specific category. Now, what I will say is that we are experiencing, an editor once used a phrase with me, or a word with me. She called it a genre bend, meaning that a book sits in a specific category, but it does incorporate little flavors. Think about some spice, how you season. It incorporates seasonings of another genre. So maybe we have a women's contemporary, but it's seasoned with a little bit of mystery. Or perhaps it is a romantic suspense, but it's seasoned with a little bit of Southern fiction. So there are some seasonings allowed, but I still, at least for me as a literary agent, I still want there to be a clear genre so that I can clearly communicate that to an editor. Ladies, bail me out or help me out.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And I think your metaphor of thinking of it as a bookstore with bookshelves, and really, I mean, and this may be something that it sounds really obvious, but if you're wondering about genres that are acceptable in Christian fiction, go to a bookstore and actually go and look at the shelves and see what is on those shelves. That's going to go a long way in educating yourself as to what's being published, and what do you see the most, what is the biggest section in that bookshelf. So those are the genres that are being published. What is it that you do not see there that is just as educational and insightful as what you do see there? So I think knowing the market and knowing what is plentiful and what there is a lack of goes a long way in determining for yourself what genre do you best fit into, what is it that you most feel called to write. And yeah, I don't know. Cynthia, do you have anything to add?
I have a couple of things, and one of them you touched on a little bit, because sometimes one of the places is either the publishing house websites, which show their catalog. Just take a look at the catalog. You'll see what each of the publishers is publishing these days. And they're publishing those because of their readers. They understand their readers as best they can and what the readers are asking for and looking for. It's almost in some ways easier to think about what's unacceptable genre in Christian fiction. Anything that does not honor God would be a no-no. If it honors some other God, if it talks about something that the Bible is clearly not in favor of, for instance, erotica as entertainment, as your fiction entertainment, that's not going to show up in the categories, or it shouldn't, in a reputable Christian publishing house in what they're looking for. But also, there are oftentimes people who ask a question like this, writers who ask a question like this because they want to be the rebel. They want to be the person, and they have this little bit of rebellion boiling in their tummy that they want to do something different from what's already out there, but oddly different. They can point to several people who have pulled that off, but usually that's because they were the exception to the rule. There was some oddity that made that happen and made that work. If we're attempting to be the exception to the rule, we're going to be disappointed far more often than we're going to find a little crack of an open door.
Yeah. Great.
I think that's such a good point. And just to add to what you were saying, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, this is not to say that Christian publishing shies away from the more serious topics, right, or the more difficult topics and things that can happen in life. But what I think we are trying to say is that the way that these are handled is done in a God-honoring way, and that light and hope always shine through. Sometimes I think it's difficult when I'll get a query for something that is touching on those more difficult topics, but it's done in such a dark and gritty way that it's just not going to be marketable to a broader spectrum of Christian publishing. And so I think there is a delicate balance that has to be struck there. We're not saying shy away from speaking about the difficult things or anything like that, but that it is done in a way that brings light and hope to others. So would you agree with that?
I would, yes. Agreed.
Okay, wonderful. What do we have next? Best practices for comp titles. Oh goodness, do we get questions about comp titles in proposals pretty consistently? So yeah, let's talk about those comparative titles and how and how we should look for them, and the types of titles that we should bring in to both our nonfiction and our fiction proposals. I'll go ahead and start us off with this one. We talked a little bit earlier, just amongst ourselves, about what we see when an author is bringing in comparables for their book, and how wide of a net they should cast when they're looking for books that are comparable to their own. And really, oftentimes there's kind of this misconception that if you look for a book that's similar to yours on the market and you do not find it, that means that that's a positive, that you are going to be the first to ever write a book on this subject. And on the other side of things, in the agenting world, in the publishing world, that is not necessarily a positive. That can mean that there is not a wide enough felt need for a book on this topic. And so really what you want to find is kind of a balance between a book that offers something new and unique, but is not so oversaturated in the market that we are just saying the same thing that 10 or 12 other authors have already said. And so, so finding books that that are comparables to yours is actually a positive thing. The secret is finding books that that are similar to yours, but then being able to show us as agents and then eventually an editor what makes yours different, what sets it out among those. So while there can be similarities, you definitely want to make sure that yours is unique, but not so unique that it's never been done before. So do either of you ladies have anything to add to that?
I do. It's actually in the form of an exercise. So when I'm talking with people about comparable titles, one of the most helpful things we can do is to be able to compare and see if we've got apples to apples or apples to oranges. So what I suggest is, because we do have the big wide world of Amazon, when if you're writing something or you're doing research to see, hey, who else is kind of in the same space, I find it helpful to locate the titles. Simply do your best to search on Amazon. I go to that particular genre, or I go to that category on Amazon, and I will pull up not just the new releases, the top 100 new releases. I'll also pull up the bestsellers. The new releases give us a picture of what's recently happened, because you want to know if there's a new book that's kind of grabbing up all of the air and the atmosphere on your topic, and this is fiction or nonfiction. And then go to bestsellers. Have there been books? If you're writing a book that is the same as Rick Warren's Purpose-Driven Life, that book is a proverbial bestseller, or the 5 love languages. And so if you're too close to those, then you've got to kind of think that through. But check and see. And then that exercise that I do is I copy and paste the description, which looks like the back cover copy. And I copy and paste 4 or 5 of those into a Word document, and then I print them out. My personal preference is that a comparable book should be traditionally published in 5 or less years old. That's my personal bend, because we want to see what your book is doing in the market in real time. And then I go through with a highlighter and I look for what are the similarities on all of those books. And so I highlight the similarities in one color. And then I go back with a different color and I highlight what that unique feature is of each book. And when I know what the similarities are and I know what the unique feature is, then that gives the best picture of where does my book stack up. And so that's a really tangible exercise you can do with comparables. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I agree. I often think that it's difficult for authors sometimes to do comparables because they don't want to say what's bad about another book compared to their own, or be boastful about their book, which, and if they are boastful about the book, that's another whole problem entirely. But so I often use this metaphor of what gap is your book filling. This book handled this particular topic so well, and that's wonderful. But I put something on. I wrote a book because it was different enough from everything else I was seeing on the market. But what is that difference? Oh, it's filling a gap because no other book on this particular subject has addressed perhaps the single mom. Maybe we have lots and lots of books about parenting, blah, 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 but we don't necessarily have enough on the market for the single mom or the single dad. That's another element. And sometimes we have to realize how large an audience are we talking about? But other times, the key that really helps make it not sound like I'm condemning another book in favor of my own is what gap can my book fill?
That is excellent. That is such good feedback, and I think we've given our audience some really excellent things to think about in regards to comp titles, and hopefully that's helped to clear up some confusion there. So we have time for one more question, and it is this: how much should I tailor my writing style to fit a specific genre? So this could be for fiction or nonfiction. And yeah, who has some thoughts on this? Barb, Cynthia, I'm going to toss this one out to either of you.
I'll start. I want to cast, I think, a bigger vision than what this question is actually trying to dial into. I don't know the listener that would have asked the question, but I wonder if the bigger question is like, how do I maintain me and still get my dream accomplished? We have writers out there who they deeply want to be published, particularly traditionally published. And then we have writers who just love to write. And I don't know where all of the listeners fall into, but I can say all of us who are here today, we're all agents, but we are also authors. And our very best writing is the writing that reflects us, like to bring the realist you into this process. And it's great to have a goal of being published, but I think that we do ourselves a disservice as writers if we are simply just trying to chase the opportunity and we are not approaching this from the standpoint of how do I be my most authentic self? I think that's the most valuable thing for you to hold on to in the process.
Mm-hmm. There's a counterpoint to that too that isn't opposite of it, but it's just another layer that needs to be taken into consideration too, which is the reader. It's all about the reader. So if in your natural you write with a very elevated style with high language and Old English or something like that, and you're trying to reach the everyday person in the pew as opposed to the seminary student with your book, yes, we will be tailoring a little bit our writing style. We won't be dumbing it down. That's the wrong thing to do. But we will be making it accessible to those who are the very readers we're writing for. So in that arena, we might tailor it a little bit. We might be making sure that we're not a barrier to their understanding the topic that we're talking about, because we're high on paleontology. We have all the information on paleontology, but the book is written for the average person, so that would matter. Also, if we write with a very lyrical style, but we're writing hard-hitting suspense, that's going to be a disconnect for the publishers. So in that arena, yep, there is a little bit of that tailoring it so that it fits the tone of the book itself and the genre that we're speaking to without losing who we are as an author.
Yeah, that's such an excellent point, and mirrors my experience as well when I see queries that come in from professionals that have written an incredible book idea and an incredible proposal, but there is that gap between the speaking in a very professional way as compared to your reader, who is going to be the average person that maybe doesn't have an advanced degree in the topic that you're writing about. And so there is always that straddling between both worlds. And those are the best writers that can take something that is a really elevated topic that they know so much about, and they can break that down into something that everyone can understand and gain something from. So ladies, this has been just a really fun episode for us, I think, to record. And I don't foresee this being the last time that we will do audience Q&A. I think that we will continue to do these as questions keep popping up and we have the time to answer them. So I want everyone listening and watching, if you are on YouTube, to know that you can find our podcast wherever you enjoy listening to podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, iTunes, all those places, Apple, we are there. And our new episodes drop on the first Wednesday of every month. And also, do not forget to subscribe to our award-winning blog that can be found at booksandsuch.com. We are so proud of that, and we love serving the writing community in all different ways. And so we are so excited that you have chosen to spend some of your precious moments with us today, and we look forward to talking with you next time.